Okay, thank you for tuning in to Stampscaping 101. You'll recognize these two scenes right here if you've watched either of the last two videos, especially the last one where I finish off that those two sky figures, backgrounds with additional imagery, making it into a complete scene. As I mentioned in this video, I wanted to make a triptych, okay? I wanted to make an idea card out of 3 of these all in one postcard, okay? So, I went with this scene because this scene would have been good too that I just did in the previous lesson, but this one's a landscape where these ones are, portrait, so I needed another scene to go vertical. So I finished off the monochromatic one right here in this lesson. And the idea of a triptych is, you have 3 different compositions, but they're kind of been designed to be, viewed as one. In this case, it wasn't conceived that way, but we can kind of make it go that way a little bit. This one right here, it worked, just so happened it worked. The subject matter kind of is on the right-hand side, kind of providing this little bookmark type of end, and this one right here has this tall tree. There's a tall tree here too, but I made those birds in this scene kind of facing inward like that. And this one's kind of more of a centralized composition with that sun kind of in the center of the scene like that. So compositionally, I think all 3 of these scenes work together, and they work together not in terms of color schemes, but color stylings, I guess. They all have that kind of jewel look to them, in terms of this kind of glowing, layered color schemes, and also the vignettes that are working around them like that. So they're all they work together, from a thematic standpoint of kind of the style and kind of framing method of each one of those. All right, but let's look at this one right here. Just a real quick color scheme, okay? Well, I guess you might not recognize this one because it was a black and white grayscale monochromatic scene that I did. And one of the things about that is you can kind of color tint, a grayscale background, any kind of colors you want to. In this one, in case I went with green, to provide something different from the orange and blue. So anyways, it's really easy composition right there. Just a few extra colors on here. A couple different bird stamps. I used certain portions of the migrating birds and migration stamp. Okay, I didn't use the whole things. I just used parts of them to get what I wanted out of them, and just one tree in the foreground stamped 3 times. Okay. So anyways, fun scene to do, really quick and easy, and I can't wait to do my idea card out of these. So if you choose to watch this video, I hope you enjoy it, and if you have any questions, drop us a note, and hope you have fun with your sky figures. Okay? Fun stuff. They really set the mood of the scene. Okay, I like how these scenes came out, these 2. And I like the 3rd one that I was working on in the last series as well, last video I should say as well, but I wanted to get a postcard, an idea card made of like 3 of them, because they're just, things look just better in compositions of 3, like a triptych. But this one's landscape, and these 2 are portraits. So I thought I would finish off this this other card that was in the video on sky figures. I think it was 2 lessons ago. But I want it to match these more jewel-toned scenes. Okay. So what I'm going to have to do is, I'll show you how to do this now. You can keep things kind of in a monochromatic, grayscale look, but the nature of dye-based inks is such that, remember, the objects underneath a given color will always show through in one way or another. Alright? So, that being said, we can alter our color scheme to whatever suits us right now, because right now it's just a neutral grayscale, okay? And I'm thinking of, I know, I want a different color from these two right here. Just, I don't know, purples would look good in there too. I don't know, but I was thinking maybe greens or something like that. But I don't know, purple might match or pair well with these ones. Green might look a little bit too much like this blue now that I'm looking at it. I tell you what, let's go warm. Let's go with a kind of an emerald green color scheme. So what, it's going to be a little bit close to that blue. Who cares? All right, so let me grab some green tones here, okay? And I'm going to work it through several values and maybe temperatures of green, okay? This green right here, I always see green as kind of neutral. If you add a little bit of blue to it, it becomes cool, and if you add yellow to it, it becomes warm. All right. So that being said, let's try that out. Okay. I'll try not exactly the ideal shape for toning, but just to show that you could pretty much tone with anything. This one just happens to be kind of clean. I forgot to clean off my tips here. All right, but no matter. Okay, now as I start applying this, remember, if I want to keep some areas a little bit lighter, in terms of an object reflecting some of that light source, just remember to, leave it as is, okay? Okay, kind of keeping in one area, utilizing the drier version of this, okay? The drier version of it is much more versatile. I can get into areas. I can use it in dark areas, but I can also use it in light areas, okay? Because it's not going to be applying so much ink, okay? So there's not just your sponge, again, just to reiterate what we've talked about in the previous videos, if you've watched them, but if you haven't, what I've mentioned is I like to work in one little area like that, and then I also utilize the drier version, incarnation of that given ink on my applicator to get into the lighter areas, okay? I like to kind of build up my color schemes and value schemes with repetition more than speed, okay? Speed, you're not going to have very much control over it, okay? So see this right here? I'm just staying in this one area in that way. I'm kind of starting off the page, and then I'm working onto the page a little at a time, so I get a little bit of a transition there between heavy saturation and a much lighter saturation. The lighter saturation, the lighter coverage, is in the lighter areas, if that makes sense, okay? So more tapping with more ink in the darker areas. And then as you apply that, it gets drier and drier, so each tab is lighter and lighter, and then you put that into the light areas, okay? This area in here is right next to the light source, so I don't want too much ink in that area. A lot of people feel that there's just not enough, and with a couple tappings they get impatient, so they go on here and they go like that. And it's right in here, okay? And that's not, what you want at all, okay? It's not precarious or anything. It's actually quite the opposite, because if you're staying in the perimeter, in the darkest areas, you can just tap away like that. But see this right here? The drier, it's kind of like a dry brush application, okay? The drier it is, it's much easier to just tap away in here and build it up like from a micro application of that ink, okay? And when it goes on so slowly like that, all right, it's much more, it's kind of methodical in some ways and careful, and things kind of come into focus in a very controlled manner, but it's not just for you know, to avoid kind of the unwanted marks, but it's also, you have really a lot of control over how much you apply, so it's, you can just kind of see things coming into focus slowly, and you can stop whenever you want to, or if you want it just barely darker, you know, you can kind of do that over the course of 10 taps, and you have all those kind of variations of that hue in that area, okay? Now it's very dry on here. I can barely see it, okay? So I'm going into my lighter areas, and I don't have to worry about getting kind of unwanted shapes. In this case, it's a heart shape, right? That would be not, you know, ideal at all, okay? But just to show you how, you know, there isn't anywhere in here where I see kind of a heart-shaped mark. I'm just tapping it lightly, and I'm just building up in repetition. Now, what I see, this is what's happening here. This is what I'm looking at now. I see that intensity starting to come out. It's like a glow, colored glow, and I really like that. But I like it in the darker areas, okay? It's just like, the darker areas are quite often the brightest areas in terms of the colors within your color scheme, okay? Or value scheme. It's like on a day, like a high noon day with really super bright sun. If you go and look at colors, they're not necessarily brighter. They're lighter, but they're not brighter, okay? Like on an overcast day, if you go into a field of flowers or something like that, the colors are going to be so much brighter because they're not being kind of washed out, all right? You know, with sunlight. So, that being said, you can just apply a lot of tone, usually on the perimeter where it gets a little darker if you're doing this technique. It's certainly changing the character of that former grayscale cloud composition, isn't it? Alright, that was a yellow-green. Let's try celery, number 92. It's just a little bit darker, probably, than that previous color. Don't worry, you won't have to add quite as much color with your darker tones and mid-tones as you did with the lighter tone. The lighter tone gets a lot more coverage because it goes into the scene farther than the darker colors, okay? Always get a feel for how wet your pads are when you're using this kind of technique here. The wetter the pad, the more ink is going to be applied, and the darker each tapping right out of the pad, okay? I like my pads kind of, I don't like them, well, I love a brand new pad, okay? It's super juicy in it, it's really nice, but as far as like control goes, when I'm re-inking my pads, if my pad kind of goes dry, I usually don't ink it up to where it's so fully saturated, okay? I usually like it kind of maybe just over medium in terms of the wetness, the ink that's, you know, your pad's holding. I don't want it too dry, but I don't want it, you know, 100% saturated, okay? And again, it's just for this reason, the way that I'm using inks. And the darker the color, I mean, I see this darker tone right here? This is a jungle green. You can use any kind of olive green you might have in your line of inks. Whatever you have in your ink collection. Okay, so this is kind of more perimeter oriented. Alright, let's try a number 72 pine green, okay? More of kind of your basic green, kind of a neutral green. A little bit more earthy than the number 4 green by Marvy. kind of closing off the edges a little bit. As I've mentioned in the previous sky video, I've said the darker you take an area within the scene, the lightest areas are going to seem by contrast, okay? So if you want to make that really stand out and be nice and light looking in appearance, you just kind of make the area, in this case on the perimeter, a little bit darker, and that really pops out that much that much lighter. Okay, now if that is too greenish, okay, it's okay. What I can do is I can kind of tone it down a little bit. If you have some, like a walnut distress or something like that, that would really, really good. Or any of the distressing. Some of them are very light, so you might not be able to see them at all, but this is a brown. I like putting browns into things like grass. It doesn't necessarily read just a straight brown because the green is showing through, but I think this tends to give certain color schemes a little bit more of like a slight earthy tinge, okay? And I think it can look fairly rich in terms of a color rather than just hot, super vibrant green, okay? And it's nice and rich. It's covering, and I would say it's muting a little bit, but not in terms of visual interest. I think it still looks really good with that on there. Alright, so there we have it. I'm going to have to decide at some point in time which side's up and which side's down. Triptychs are one of those things. I wasn't thinking of these as a triptych, but it'll work as a triptych. Sometimes I have kind of my center composition, the one in the middle. I put the composition kind of centralized in terms of a focal point. I like to have my left side composition kind of weighted on the outsides, and it just so happened that these ones, you know, I mean this one's fairly balanced here, but we have this fisherman kind of pointing in, right? And in this composition right here, we have this like a bookend here, okay? And it kind of, the visual direction kind of moves in this way, okay? I think this will work pretty good like that. I think that would be okay, but in terms of this triptych, I think this is top and this is bottom right here. Now, one of the things that I was thinking about doing, or when I was wondering what I should do, is I thought I would just go for some trees in here and, you know, have some kind of focal point up there with like some birds or something like that. But something nice and firmly, I don't know, anchored in terms of my center composition, okay? And yeah, I think that just some dark trees will do it, okay? Form of the spruce will be good. Maybe 3 of them. 1, 2, 3 impressions, maybe. And I think that should do it. So pretty simple in terms of composition, you know, clouds and a tree, maybe some birds up there, I'm not sure. I already have these birds in here, so I wasn't quite sure if I wanted them again in some area, but I don't know, we can kind of decide that. Alright, my black pad, I'm going for something fairly dark, and I know my page is going to be, my card surface is going to be really, really wet down. In fact, I put my finger there and it lifted the ink because that's so saturated around on the perimeter that it's, you know, it's on this paper, but in some ways it's kind of floating on there. It's kind of suspended a little bit. Let me throw a little bit of black around on this before I stamp it out. I like to do that as far as like a little vignette effect by putting black on here. If I've used black in here, and of course I have on the clouds, you didn't see it in this video, but the compositional portion of this video, I used black to stamp out the clouds, and I'm going to stamp the trees in black, so I'm going to finish off my vignette in black ink. This is really saturated. Okay, I used a lot of ink, green ink, on this card, so I'll see if I can get a really dark, deep impression with the spruce tree large, or it's rather just spruce large, I think. Alright. I'll let the ink transfer a little bit longer in these impressions, unless the first one comes out perfectly saturated and transferred. It's because, and I mention this all the time in my videos, but sometimes when you're stamping kind of a wet stamp, you know, freshly inked stamp, and the surface of your page is wet, it's like stamping wet into wet, and sometimes when you pull out the stamp, it works like a vacuum, and all that ink that you wanted to have transferred over the surface of the card, it just sticks right on your stamp and it pulls off, so you don't get the impressions or the value of impression as dark as you might have wanted it. So you have to kind of let that ink transfer. Kind of. I don't know if you can see it right in the middle there. It kind of vacuumed off, but so be it. A hairdryer would be good, you know. I could have dried off that and stamped it out and it would be fine, but it's okay with me. Okay, I'm going for another impression of this. Let's see, do I want to go high? Yeah, I'll go high and kind of off to the side a little bit. So you don't always have to use, you know, remember in scenic stamping, or if you're new to scenic stamping, you don't always have to have the entire stamp on a card, okay? In many forms of stamping where you have kind of outline designs and they're all kind of the main subject matter types of imagery, you don't want to have it like, you know, just a foot of some figure kind of in the scene or something like that, or in the card. You know, you don't want to have a half of a quote stamp or something like that. But when it comes to scenic stamping, you know, you're just using certain portions for what you want, and you can leave out anything, you know, that you don't want. All right, so in other words, I stamped that tree kind of off the edge right there. Okay, there's the other portion of it. And to reiterate the triptych idea, things in threes, I'll do this tree, but I'll stamp it a little bit lower, kind of like so. You can see things in the trees are in threes here. If I'm not mistaken, I think I actually stamped out that spooky branch in this one 3 times. There's 1, I think 2, and then another one 3 here. Conscious of that? I don't think so. I just thought it would look good, but I don't know. Things happen to look good in threes as far as compositions go, so. Okay, is that long enough? Yeah, that was good. All right, so look what that does. Okay, we've stamped trees over the top of, you know, some things that were pretty nice within this composition right here, but I don't think those trees detract from, you know, the background at all. I think they kind of play off of each other, having something dark and heavy against something kind of light and billowy in the background. You know, it kind of increases the appearance of each one of them in terms of what makes those areas different from one another, okay? Something hard against something soft makes the softness look even softer, I guess, okay? All right, now, is that stamp clean enough? I'll clean it later. I do need something in here, I believe, okay? We have some sort of life in each one of these scenes. In this case, it's the fishermen. We have the little flock of birds up there. I don't know if I'm going to do this. I took a look at this bird. Geese right here. Geese in flight. Hard to get it to focus in sometime. Well, I put it like right there and I said, no way. Alright. But this looks pretty good down here, actually. It's kind of interesting. I usually put my subject matter somewhere up in the light, but I don't know if I want that, though. Still deciding. Not sure. Okay, compositionally, triptych, and triptych format, I think they kind of match fairly well. This one definitely needs something in here, though. Just to kind of bring it all together. This one would have been a good central one, too. Let me check something here. How does that look? Actually, that might look better, huh? We have the warm one in the middle, kind of balanced off. I have that tree over here, those two trees, weighty enough, and this is kind of moving in that direction. Okay, change of plans. This one's going to be my left one. Those trees are really super wet right now, so it wouldn't be bad to take a break from this and allow those things to set up, and I'll see if anything comes to mind as far as what to use in here. I can use some smaller birds or something like that, since this scene right here no longer is the kind of the focal point as far as the arrangement of three, so I don't know. I'll take a look, see what we come up with. Oh, this is interesting. If I did the flock on both of these, that one right there, I don't know. I'll take a look and see. Okay, we've given this card a little bit of time to dry. The vibrancy isn't quite where I want it to be, so I'm going to add a little bit more ink to it, but I think I might have a solution as far as the imagery goes. This is the migrating birds right here. The birds are a little bit too big, though, okay? And this one I thought would just be too delicate over those kind of grayscale clouds in the background. They're stamped in black, and then if I stamp this in black, it would just be a little bit too delicate. So one of the things I was mentioning about using portions of stamps for what you want, I thought about just doing maybe like a selection of those, like maybe like that many right here, okay, in the scene. So maybe have something large, and maybe these smaller ones in the background, or a portion of them, maybe. So you're not physically dissecting a scene, you know, a stamp up or something like that, but you can use just certain portions of it for your whatever needs you might have. So I'm just trying to ink up the ones I want. Alright, it'd be easier if I had a pen for this. Alright, let me try to get some on these ones as well. So I kind of have those ones and that. I got a little ink on that one, so I'm going to remove that. Remove some ink over here. I'm trying to decide if I want that one right there. I don't think I do. I thought it just looked a little bit too big, I think. Trailing off like that without those other ones. Actually, that grip would look good too. Let me see. Then I have to decide where do I want to use it. Okay, let's go a little bit lower. Let's try here. As you can imagine, there's really no right or wrong in terms of where you place it, how many birds you use, etc. Okay. For me, I'm just going for a little bit of variation. Okay, so we have is that. Okay. Now, let's take this one. And I tell you what, this is pretty much dominated by this portion up here. I'm thinking about just going with these ones down below here, okay? But they'll be used above these ones right here, okay? So, again, we want to, potentially, you want to maximize the usage of your imagery. And in landscape stamping, scenic stamping, many designs can be just used for the portion of them that you want, okay? With outlined stamps, you can probably do that, but they're usually meant to be used in their entirety, otherwise you're missing part of the outlines on them, okay? So it's a little bit of a different spirit. You can really make your stamps go a long way in terms of their usage. If you don't like them in the entirety, just stamp a portion of them, or see if there's a portion of them that you really want, okay? So you see that? It's kind of in a foreground, background, or I guess in this case it would be midground and background. Okay? Alright. So, looks okay, I think. It keeps the motion going this way in towards our central scene, okay? This also works, it works going this way from a visual standpoint. Alright, now let's see something here. Dare I use this one? This one's a lime green. It's called light green. Very, very bright. I haven't cleaned off my applicator from when I had probably black on it, so I might not be getting the pure version of this number 11, but we'll see. Yeah, it's pretty bright though. Look at the top. Look at the difference between the top and the bottom. Yeah. Alright. A little bit more jeweled looking. I wanted it to be very bright, kind of looking like the light is coming from within again, the other scenes. Alright, I'm going to have to do a little matching in terms of textures. We've used that Dr. Martin's bleed proof white on the other two scenes, and it just it wouldn't match without that texture, without that media used on the scenes. So you can see my brush tip right here. It's like hard as a rock. See that right there? But just add a little bit of water. soak it in there a little bit. And that bleed-proof white is really, it just goes into solution beautifully. And your tip is nice and flexible again, okay? It's a really good paint. If you don't know what bleed-proof white is, through some of the other videos, it's an opaque white watercolor paint. And it's called bleed-proof because it's like primer or something like that, like an extreme primer. Not necessarily, you know, to be used as an undercoat, but I'm just talking about in terms of the opacity of it and coverage. Okay, when you put it on, it's nice and opaque, unless you really water it down a ton. But okay, I'm looking for a lot of control out of this, so get a few practice strokes in. If you do this a lot, you probably don't need to, because you'll know your media more than I do. But let's see here. I do have that bleed-proof white on the foreground of those branches. It's in the foreground of these trees. So I'm going to have to put some on the foreground of these trees as well. I don't think it really needs it. I think it looks good without it, but in the context of a triptych, it really needs to be matched in terms of a textural standpoint. Alright, I'm just put this down right here just because that ink is a little bit wet up there. And I need to access these trees this way. Okay. Alright, so just in general, I'm putting some of these marks on the tops of some of those branches. Okay? See that where it's catching light like that? Reflecting it? These little strokes here and there, like that. You don't want to outline it, no. Kind of avoid the, if you do have an urge to place an outline on anything, okay? And kind of vary it a little bit, just so it's not so, I don't know, monotonous in terms of where you're putting things, okay? Okay, let's try this one. Okay, light is coming from here. The side of the tree that I'll place most of the highlights is this left side of the tree. And like I said, I don't think this tree didn't, or scene didn't need this type of highlighting, but since the other ones had it, but it is a lot of fun to do this type of thing. You can use a white gel pen as well. For this type of touch, this type of mark, whatever you want to call it. Okay. And I don't have any highlights in here as far as the sky goes, but I have a little bit in this one, up here in the clouds. See it up there? Why not do the same thing here? So on the billows, on the underside, okay. Oh, of these billows, I'll put a little bit of a mark on them, a little highlight, like they're reflecting the light. Okay, now these ones are top lit because the light is coming from above. So I'll put the highlights on the top sides of these billows. Okay, it's basically on the same side of the cloud, but you know, it's just this cloud's been configured differently on different sides of the paper. If you're curious to see this composition stamped out, you can check out, as far as the sky figures go, you can check out the video 2 videos ago, 2 lessons ago. Okay, so a little bit more lighting in here. That one stands out a little bit too much, right? Gone. It's that easy, you know. Everything in here is very forgiving as far as the technique goes, and what I don't want to is I don't want to eradicate all that. If I toned it all out, then it wouldn't be that bright, you know. So you can't really, I mean, I guess you can go back in and paint a bunch of that in, but it would look a little bit kind of forced, I think. So the best thing is just to leave those areas of light that you want to remain light, okay? Other than that, you know, like all these little embellishments and things like that, if there's certain areas that you don't like, you can cover it up with the tree. That wasn't the case for this one, it was just all part of the composition, but these trees like that, or foreground elements, are a great way to kind of just cover over that which you might not, you know, be totally enamored with. Okay, let's see what we have here. This is a really easy composition. You know, we're talking about, what, 3 stamps after the cloud. And I think that'll serve its purpose as far as being kind of a third visual within the triptych structure. Okay. This looks pretty good. As far as, as far as being arranged in 3s. I think this could be used. This could use a spray and it'll get much more vibrant. Maybe I'll go do that right now. But anyways, triptych, okay? And I want to make an idea card that goes like this. It's going to have to, you know, these ones are going to have to be shrunk quite a bit, but I could put the name of the, I don't know, name of the series or I don't know, whatever, underneath it. And, I don't know, Stampscaping 101 up top here. But anyways, okay, you're probably sick of seeing these scenes right here, but after you do something, sometimes other things kind of reveal themselves as far as possibilities go. And in this case right here, it was the scenes. And then when I saw those 2 put together, I thought, you know, if I did a postcard, I didn't want to do it of just one or the other, or whatever, each one of them individually, but I thought they could look good arranged as a little set like that. They certainly relate to each other in terms of the content that was covered, and they relate to each other in terms of the intensity and kind of the style of color application that happened to go into it in terms of this vignette type of effect, leaving some areas within the scene light. In this case, it's around 2 very specific objects in terms of the sun and the moon, and this one right here is just an open space. So having those things remain light like that will define your light source within a scene, and kind of bring that value range into a scene, okay? And it kind of brings it to life in terms of having kind of this, you know, definition of a light source in there. So the scene's has trees in it, this one's about a lake, and this one's about a lighthouse, but for me, again, I feel that the spirit of these ones are more about what's happening in the sky than the objects within the scene itself, okay? So anyways, it's fun stuff, and let's see. I think I'll go out and spray these, and I'll show you what that looks like. See how vibrant this one is right here? I think when it dries, it's going to dry a little bit dull like this one, so let's do a little compare contrast. Okay. And let's see if this one I can't kind of regain a lot of the depth and vibrancy. And then this one right here, when I spray it, I have to kind of watch out that I don't eradicate a lot of the little effects that are going on in here as far as that pigment ink is concerned. Okay, so let's get to that and I'll be right back. Okay, these have been sprayed, and I don't know if you can tell the difference or not. I think you can. Look at that deep, deep, rich kind of vibrant glow from those two. Here's the green one. Look at that nice kind of glow working in here, that vibrancy. Okay, and this one right here, I kind of just sprayed the perimeter so that I wouldn't get rid of that touch-up, that, you know, those little touches that I did in here with the color box pigment ink. But anyways, let's take a look here and see if we have some nice, deep, rich color compositions, color schemes, I guess, you know, for what these three are kind of depicting, and that's lighting, okay? So, anyways, oh, this is the thing that I use. This can's all kind of faded out because I left it outside, and the paint can, you know, faded, of course, but this is just your Krylon Crystal Clear. It's a pretty good one. There's other ones out there as well. You can use any of them, but, you know, it's just an art sealant or whatever. And it really does the trick. It really brings out the vibrancy and the depth and saturation of, you know, what something looks like when it's freshly stamped and the ink is still wet, okay? So, deep, rich, vibrant tones, okay? So, I recommend to everyone to spray their scenes. It also kind of protects it a little bit, and doesn't make it light fast, okay? If I put these outside, you know, chances are these really super bright types of dye-based inks would be subject to fading. I know the mementos are supposed to be light fast, okay? It says fade resistant right here on the pad, but I don't know. You know, I haven't done any tests or something like that, but anyways, these other ones are. I find that in the art world, you know, when I look at oil paints or acrylics and things like that, they have a light fastness rating, okay, on the back of it. And I found that it seemed to be that, you know, the common theme was just the brighter the color, the less kind of light, fast it was. You know, it'd be more prone to fading more than other ones, so, or faster than other colors. So, anyways, but it does make things look just so beautiful and saturated and glowing. In terms of this technique of the dye-based inks being layered over one another and building up that nice kind of a rich, saturated appearance, okay? So anyways, I know this video was about this one right here, but I think this one will go in nicely with the other two when I do my idea card. And I can't wait to see what that looks like. I love triptychs, and I love kind of putting them into a nice arrangement. So this one right here was a fun one. You know, when you do those kind of monochromatic grayscale backgrounds, you can color them with whatever you want, okay? Now, if I knew I was going to do this in a kind of this emerald lime greenish colored scheme, chances are I would probably stamp out my clouds with one of those colors in there, possibly two. Do it in a medium green and maybe a darker green on the perimeter or something like that, and a light green in here, or just different incarnations of it, maybe medium green out there, and then color it up again, blot it off once, and then stamp it in there so it's just a lighter version of it because it's a drier impression. But anyways, that being said, you can also just go with whatever color you stamp something out in, like grayscale, and then you can tone it in with whatever colors you want to right over the top of it. And that's one of those things that's really fun about playing with monochromatics, is you can do kind of a kind of an exercise in color tinting, you might say. So anyways, fun stuff, and I have my next idea card right here, and looking forward to putting that out there. So trying to think of a name for it, but I don't know, figure out something. Anyways, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and if you have any questions, just drop us a note in the comment section.